Okay, well, hello everybody and welcome back to the build. In this video, we are going to mount the dry sump tank for the LT4 engine. Okay, so stay tuned. Okay, well, here's a rear view of the engine compartment where we're going to mount the dry sump tank. We're going to cover, I guess, a few things in this video. We'll talk a little bit about the location that I chose to mount the sump tank. Also, some of the mocked up designs for the various brackets I came up with. And then finally, we'll do a little bit of a work in process on the final mounting of the brackets to fit the oil tank in this sort of tight area. There's not a lot of clearance, okay? So let's talk about tank placement. So, a couple things drove my decision to put the oil tank here. First thing is, you need to buy the right size oil tank. So a stock Z06, its tank is roughly 2.3 gallons. And any 2.3 gallon tank that was ready made was a little bit too tall to fit in the area, either in the frame or outside the frame. So I wanted to get a slightly wider diameter tank. This one is 7.5 inches, and it's about 19 inches tall, and it handles, I guess it handles about 2.5 gallons. So that gives me a margin of error. Okay, you can see, I sent away to the company. They gave me the exact dimensions, so I mocked up this tank, and it's a tight fit, but it does fit in there really well. I sort of like putting the tank in this area. I feel it's safe, inside the frame rails, so it doesn't get crushed in a moderate accident. Maybe in a major rear end accident, it could get crushed, but I guess I'll have other things to worry about if that actually happens. Here's a prop here. I mean, some people sort of mount it out this way, but I've got the intercooler brackets here, and then some people mount it even further up and get it inside the cove, inside the body cove of the rear vent. I'm going to put a fire extinguisher here, so I figured this was really a good location for it. Okay, so let's segue over to the work table, and I'll show you the various iterations of the brackets I came up with. Okay, well, here are some couple concepts that I came up with regard to how to mount the the supplied mounting bands to the SLC chassis. And look, like a lot of other components on the car, I mean, I consider this a custom component. And 9 times out of 10, I'll mock it up at least once, if not twice. And in this case, I mocked it up 3 times until I'm sort of satisfied with the design. But anyway, moving from left to right, so these are the band clamps. They're stainless steel bands with some T-bolts, some rubber cushioning, and 2 of these mount the sump tank very securely, but there's no place to just simply bolt them onto the chassis, so I need to make some transition brackets. This was the first design I came up with, and you can see, this would mount, right on the bracket, and you can see the profile, and this would mount to the back of the chassis, bringing the tank closer to that rear closeout panel that closes out the fuel tank area, so the tank can clear the frame rails. I realized, though, if I use this type of design, I wouldn't have enough room behind the dry sump tank to run the cooling tube, so I ditched this and I came up with what I call the paint stick approach. This sort of looks like a paint stick. Very simple, but instead of mounting the bracket on top of it, I would mount the bracket behind it. And that should place the tank in exactly the right place. And, you know, what I realized though is you got a screw here, you know, it could bend this way. Even if you applied 2 of these brackets, the whole thing could sort of shift. And there's very little room for error with mounting this tank. So I said, you know what? I sort of like the paint stick approach, but if I make a square and I can design it so the very bottom of the square matches up to the bottom of the frame, this will be basically self-plumbing. So I can mount the tank to this in a square way, and then this will mount on the chassis in a square way, and it'll be much easier to mount perfectly. So I took this design and then I made it out of aluminum. You notice I have a little bit of a tab here. Basically, I forgot to, you know, like in the top here, I left this area blank because I was going to make this bracket, but down below, I drilled all the holes and tapped them, and then realized I wanted to leave those blank. I was lucky enough that the screws will line up well into this bracket, but one of the screws is probably going to be just off a little bit to this edge, so I extended it. But anyway, I think this is a good design. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the tank on this so I could locate the height of the tank. The very bottom of the tank will match up with the bottom of this bracket. Then I'll mount these you know, rubber band clamps on the bracket, and then once I have the tank attached to it, I can shift it left to right in the frame and then mount it to the frame in the proper left to right orientation. And as long as I keep this bottom edge flat with the bottom of the chassis, the tank will be perfectly vertical. So that's sort of the philosophy here. That's the intent. We'll see how it works out. So the next step, I'm going to show you basically how I'll match up the tank to this bracket. We'll drill the holes, and then we'll mount it on the car. Okay, well, I've got the tank squared up against the transition bracket, and you know, I used a level. I had this on the granite countertop, which is level, and you know, the whole idea here is that the bottom of the tank is level with the bottom of the chassis, and this bracket will also be equal with the bottom of the chassis. So that sort of makes it easy to you know, place the tank and figure out where the holes need to go in the transition bracket. Okay, I've marked that bracket up. I'll drill some holes. We'll see how it comes out. And then the last step is really attaching the bracket to the chassis. Okay, we got the holes drilled. A mere 4 hours later, about an hour a hole. My OCD's not too bad. But hey, this thing is totally square, totally plumb. Looks good. So now we're going to attach the transition bracket to the frame, and we will call it a wrap. All right, well, we're getting ready to mount the tank on the chassis, and basically what I need to do is drill these 3 holes. There's a hole here, 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 through the frame. I want to make sure these holes are just perfectly straight through. The drill sort of, the larger drill sort of interferes with the bottom plate, so I have this small little drill attachment, and I had this piece of aluminum lying around. So I drilled the hole, you know, exactly where it needs to be on the frame, and this holds the drill perfectly perpendicular. So I'll drill through the other side of the frame and it'll come out, you know, just very true, so we don't have the screws that are going through the frame, you know, coming in at an angle, which sort of screws everything up. Okay, good little tip. I learned that from another builder, so I figured I'd share it. All right, well, here we go. Got the first hole drilled in, just perfectly straight. I mean, I've come to the conclusion I might suffer from a syndrome called hole-itis, the acute fear of drilling a hole in the wrong place, turning your SLC chassis into a piece of Swiss cheese. So, you know, every hole I drill, I just measure, remeasure, think about it, and then finally drill. You know, if I was an aluminum welder, I guess I wouldn't be so paranoid about it, but you know, I don't have the ability to patch these holes up, so that tool came in handy. I'll finish drilling the next 2 holes, and then we'll take a look at the dry sump tank on the frame. All right, well, this will be the next to last segment of the video. You know, to continue the insanity here, I mean, you'll see in a minute how little room for error I have here. But anyway, what I've done is I've clamped a plate to the bottom of the frame rail, and then I've clamped the bracket to the chassis. So the idea is that the bottom, you know, the bottom of the transition bracket is equal with the bottom of the frame. And then take a look here. I mean, I've got it all tightened up. We've got basically a 1/4 inch, not even, a little bit of room between the frame there, a little bit of room between the frame there, like 2/10 of an inch, and a little bit of room between there. Now I wind up putting some silicone rubber strips there, but this thing should be mounted solid, and it should be good to go. You know, look, if I don't get these holes right, I could always slot the holes and shift it around, but you know, just being a perfectionist, you know, I really want to just nail the holes on the first shot. So I'm going to drill the center hole on the bottom. I'll clamp that in, and then I'll drill the rest of the holes and attach the bracket, and then we'll take a look. We'll see how it turns out. I love it when a plan comes together. All right, so it is mounted. Like I said, I'll probably add 2 more screws on the top of the plate, but you can see I've got plenty of room for that cooling tube to snake behind the tank. The bracket is a 1/4 inch thick. It'll be very sturdy. I've got sort of 2 inches of crush space between the tank and the oil tank and the fuel tank. I've got plenty of room there, plenty of room there, and just about enough room there. This one I'll definitely put a piece of like 1/8 inch silicone or rubber pad. That'll do the job. I don't know if we can see. Right at the bottom. Lowest center of gravity. So it looks good. All right. Once again, thanks for watching. Takes a lot of patience to watch these videos. Takes a lot of patience to you know, squeeze these parts with very little room for error into the chassis, but I'm excited with the way it came out. All right, thanks for watching. Take care.